Darrell Dapprich joins the show to preview Auburn's 2025 football season. Let's go, man.
You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Yes, sir. What's up, Auburn family? What's up to my up-tempo gang? Welcome to the latest edition of the Up-Tempo Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dustin Smith, joined by a special guest today, my guy, Darrell Dapprich from the Locked On Network, my guy, Darrell Dapprich from over at the Barn. Darrell, am I going out on a limb here and saying that me and you probably had the only minor league hockey discussion a couple weeks ago at SEC Media Days in Atlanta?
I think it is. Did we talk Tallahassee Tiger Sharks for a little bit?
We talked Tallahassee. We talked about Pensacola Ice Pilots.
Man, I love the Ice Pilots. That place to go watch a game because of the presence of the base there and so many people that are stationed that come from northern and come from hockey-rich areas. It was so much fun. And I used to go watch the Birmingham Bulls 25, 30 years ago at the BJCC. You know, I was a frustrated hockey fan living in Montgomery, Alabama. There wasn't a lot of hockey. That was before the Thrashers came and went. So, yeah, we were the only two. I think people walked by us and wanted to drug test us and see if we were okay.
Yeah. What's wrong with those guys? But, hey, man, glad to have you on the show, man. Been a fan of your work for a long time. I'm really excited to do this episode with you. One thing that me and you were talking about, just kind of hanging around there in Atlanta, was this offensive line. And I know you're really high on it. We kind of talked about some of those young guys that we're excited about, and that kind of speaks to the depth of this team. But I want to talk about the guys that right now that are projected starters. We heard Hugh Freeze in his opening press conference to fall camp say, hey, I had an NFL scout come in here and tell me I've got 5 guys and my first guy off the bench all have NFL grades. Look, Hugh Freeze is a straight shooter. I think we've learned that in his 3 years as Auburn's head coach. He's not just blowing smoke when he says that. And when you look at the talent of those guys, it's obviously believable. We spoke with Connor Liu. They were at SEC Media Days, and everyone's really high on him. Transfer Xavier Chaplin coming over for Virginia Tech. So let's start here, Darrell. Let's just say that this offensive line comes close. Doesn't even hit their ceiling, but they come close to hitting their ceiling. With the weapons that we have on the outside, what does that mean for the Auburn offense, and what does that mean for Jackson Arnold?
Well, you know, I think that for years we've just kind of wanted a serviceable offensive line around Auburn. That's been the directive. It's been, can they keep the quarterback upright? Can they be serviceable? Could you put maybe 1 or 2 guys in the league every couple years? And so to have the type of offensive line that Auburn is projected to have. And there's 3 key components that I look at that tells me that this is not just hype. First of all, the certainty. So, Dustin, if I was to talk to you in January after the portal kids signed, I think everybody that follows Auburn football had a pretty good idea what the offensive line would look like, with the exception of the Mason Murphy too tall Miller position. I think that's interchangeable. I would have had Miller starting at right tackle. And I know Mason Murphy was very highly rated, but I think the continuity and the certainty of, oh my gosh, you're bringing back 4 guys from last year's team. You're letting Dylan Wade play his natural position at guard and not bouncing him in and out from tackle to guard. You've got a potential first-round draft pick in Chaplin on the offensive line. You've got another one in Connor Liu. Centers don't go in the first round, but they typically can go in the second or third round and play right away in the NFL if a team needs one. So all that, and then there's depth. Look, me and Zach talked about this, and other people that I've been guests on. There are Auburn teams that would have killed to have DeAndre Carter as the backup guard, as the guard, starting guard, to have too tall Miller as the tackle, to have a Dylan Senda as your starting center. I mean, this team has a couple of reserves that would have started on previous Auburn teams. So the fact that some of these guys are going to play at the next level, the fact that they're coming back having played a year together, there's some continuity. The fact that they're very, very talented, and you and I could have closed our eyes and picked the starters back in January, tells me that if they just play to a acceptable or reasonable level, meaning, just play to the level that you were recruited to play, Everything starts with the lines of scrimmage. It's why Georgia was so successful for so many years. It's why Alabama was so successful. So what does that do? Well, I think it's a trickle-down effect. I think if the offensive line plays the way it should, it gives time for routes to develop. And who is going to be the beneficiary of routes develop? Do you think there's there's defensive backs out there that can stay on Malcolm Simmons, Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton if the offensive line allows the routes to develop?
I think it's impossible.
It's impossible. It allows Jackson Arnold to check down, to look, and go to secondary receivers. There's so many things that come off of this and that are snowball effects and trickle-down effects, and that's why I think – and then with running backs that are kind of unproven, without a bell cow running back, a running back by committee, if you've got an offensive line that can push the pile and move people, and that helps your running backs that now, if it's running back by committee, you got fresh legs, fresh running backs. It's an absolute transitional springboard effect that affects other positions on the field.
Yeah, and, you talk about how in years past, a guy like DeAndre Carter would have been coming in and we would immediately have been saying, hey, dude, how quick can you play? And I think that's something that me and you also talked about that I'm really excited about is not only are we looking at the current guys that are expected to play this year, but you look at guys like Ty Buster and Brody Stroll and DeAndre Carter, and it's like, and we got a batch of youngins coming up underneath that are just as talented, if not more talented than some of those guys. Really, really excited to see it, Darrell. Another guy that you've been high on all summer, I've heard you over at Locked On talking a lot about, is Kieron Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he might be one of the most important pieces on this team because there's no secret about what Keldrick Falk is. There's going to be focus on Keldrick Falk. So if somebody on that other side, on that other edge position, can step up and just be a guy that other offenses have to focus on, that obviously makes it a lot easier for Keldrick Falk. What is it about Kieron Crawford that has you so excited and so optimistic that he can be that guy coming up this year?
Well, first of all, you've touched on it. You cracked the code. I think there's going to be so much attention on Falk on that side with, chipping a tight end over there, the running back chipping over that side. Wherever Keldrick Falk is probably where your offensive coordinator is going to devise pass protection to go to that side, whether it's a running back, a tight end, whatever. He's going to get double teamed. He's going to get a lot of attention whatever has to happen from that standpoint. So I think Crawford's going to see a lot of one-on-ones. Is he physical and athletic enough to beat a left tackle? Yes. Here's what I think. I think Crawford, first of all, anyone that's seen him from last season to this year, he has transformed his body. He absolutely looks like an NFL player as far as physique. Now, you still have to do it on the field. Speed, quickness, his twitch. This is a guy that was really good at Arkansas State, but similar to Jalen McLeod, I think guys that come from the group of five and go to Power Four, it just takes longer. And not only are you coming, Dustin, from a group of five, and I used to be a Pac-12 guy, get mad all you want out there. You ain't coming from the group of five to go play in the Pac-12 or in the ACC or the Big 12 that was watered down before. You were coming to play in the most elite conference, and it takes some time. And I think he's figuring it out. I think his body's transformed. I think he started to come on a little bit at the end of last year. And I think there's going to be so much attention and blocking schemes to stop Falk that it's going to allow him to have a lot of one-on-ones, and I think he's going to eat. And I think that's going to be a really, really key thing, because if he gets pressure on the quarterback, and if Auburn can get any kind of interior push with Blockton or Crawford or Travis or whoever, get that where that pocket, you're not sacking the quarterback, but he can't step up and make the throw. You know what I'm talking about? He feels it a little bit.
Yeah, got to get that pressure from the interior.
Yes, he feels it. He can't really step into his throw or step in. It starts to he feels that feeling around him of there's a presence. And then you've got Crawford coming from the outside with this secondary. If you've got to hurry throws, if you make poor decisions when you throw, if you get happy feet, then that's where I think he's going to get some sacks. I think he's going to cause some fumbles. I think he's going to have a good year because you touched on it early on in your commentary. They're going to be so much focus on Falk. He's going to be left alone a lot. Well, not alone, but one-on-ones.
Yeah, and if a couple of those other guys, Darrell, like Amaris Williams and some of those other guys can step up and just provide quality reps, I think the big thing that I've seen in Keldrick the first 2 years is he's kind of had to have been overused. It's like he's kind of got tired as the season's worn on. He's gotten tired in the fourth quarter of some games, or at least not his 100% self, because he just had to take so many reps. If we can keep Keldrick fresh until the fourth quarter, and then on that crucial 3rd and 8, if he's good to go, he's got all his juice. I think it could work wonders for him, man. And we could finally start to get some pressure on the quarterback.
Man, that's a great point, because Auburn did that in its years. It was a different scheme, but they did that a lot with D. Ford and Carl Lawson and Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson. There would be series where people would be screaming at the TV that I was watching the game with and go, why is Davidson and Brown out of the game on this series, right? Well, because in the fourth quarter, they were eating. And I think keeping Keldrick fresh with an Amaris Williams coming in, who's very motivated, very contrite, understands his role now, and I think he's ready to have a absolute step up as far as the year is concerned. That will be key in the fourth quarter when Falk's trying to either stop a ball carrier. Think about this, Dustin. If you're down 3 in an SEC game with under 3 minutes in the fourth quarter, you're going to face teams that are going to try to pound it at you.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to talk about pass rush. Falk needs to be able to step up as a defensive end and stop the run too. And to do that, you need to be fresh. And I think Blockton, that's why he talked about, I'm not going to play 50 snaps. I'm only going to have to play 30. You keep guys fresh like that, get off the field on 3rd down, whether it's the opponent's running the ball or throwing the ball. They're going to have to be able to be flexible enough to do either.
Yeah, I had your guy Charlie 5, aka Kyle Rush, or Kyle Rush, aka Charlie 5. However, I guess I said that wrong, but I had him on a couple episodes ago, and he talked about his standouts were from when he went and watched practice. He said, "Man, James Ash and Murray pops to me, and if those guys can just step up and provide quality reps for you, like you just said, it doesn't have to be a lot, but man." I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about the potential of that defensive line. So when we look at some of these units, and we're five practices in fall camp here, what part of this team are you most confident in? If the season started today, Darrell Dapprich says, okay, I know that this is going to perform, that this part of the team is going to execute. And then where's your biggest question? Where you still got a little bit of concern at?
Well, the first part of that question is such an easy layup. I mean, the receiving room is, and it only got better, in my opinion, the last 2 or 3 days. I will be the first to admit that I focused too much on just 3 dudes: Singleton, Simmons, and Coleman. Now, I talked a little bit about Horatio Fields because I saw some tape on him at Wake Forest. And this is a guy that came from a Power 4 school, and I watched him at A-Day not go down after initial contact inside the 10. Like, they threw him a lot of drag routes, and a safety would hit him and he wouldn't go down, and he would continue forward into the end zone, or he would fall forward for 3 more yards. I was very impressed by his route running and his physicality. But Perry Thompson was a stud at A-Day, a star. And you're talking about a guy that is a 5-star receiver that was the first big flip that Auburn had in that class before DeMarcus Riddick, before Cam Coleman, and he got slept on a little bit. And I think, running 21.8 miles per hour at practice 2 days ago with his physicality, now I'm really, that's 5 dudes, 5 guys. And then Sam Turner, the freshman, is getting rave reviews. Now, there's not enough footballs to throw in the air to get to all those guys.
Right.
But what it's going to do, and it's going to, and I know Mike G's talked about this. I've asked this question. You're going to see personnel changes to where they'll go empty backfield and no tight end. And Auburn hasn't done that in a while. And they'll go 4 wide, and they'll need to. And I know that the defensive coordinators will know exactly what's coming. But what are you going to do? Who are you going to cover?
Right.
Fields said that today. He said, pick your poison. If you line Singleton and Coleman up at opposite ends of the fields, and by God, I hope they do, and don't put them on the same side, you can't shade if you're a safety. You can't overplay if you're a safety. And then you got Simmons inside. as a slot guy, or if you put Singleton as the other slot and then put Thompson and Coleman out wide, you have options there that, and I'm not going to, Auburn hasn't had a receiving core like this since the 2014, but they were so conventional. They had a fullback and a tailback, and they only put 3 wides on the field at the same time. But they had 3 good ones in Arome Shadu, Abamanu, and Courtney Taylor, and they spread the ball around. And they also had a really good tight end that they had to throw the ball to that year. And so, look, it's going to be different than what Auburn fans have ever seen with the weapons and the passing game. So that's the area that I think is I feel the most confident in, and even feel more confident than in a week ago. I am concerned about the running backs, and that was a concern that I had going into the year because there wasn't that bell cow back. I love Jeremiah Cobb. I have for 2 years. Can he carry the ball 15, 20 times a game and be that back? We don't know. Damari Alston, can he do that and overcome his fumbling problems? Is Darrell Robinson ready to step up from UConn playing Tulsa and Rice and some of these other teams and Temple and playing in the SEC? He's got all the tools. I'm glad that Omar Mapson is getting all this love, but he was probably coming in the season looking to be your 5th back, and now you've got injuries on top of that. You got Alston with a heel problem, Cobb with a finger problem. So until I see them against Baylor rush the football for positive yards and have an effective ground game, I'm a little bit concerned. But I was talking to somebody who's watched football and knows football for a very long time and is coach at the collegiate level, and he said, if Auburn's passing game is what its potential could be, you are going to see running backs have holes to run through because of how safeties will drop and linebackers will drop off the line of scrimmage. And by the time they get touched, they're 4 or 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. That is where it's unconventional, whereas Auburn fans were used to the run setting up a play-action pass scenario. And this scenario, Auburn may be able to run the ball because they've loosened up the defense by throwing it so effectively downfield. And so that makes me feel a little bit better, but until I see it, I've got some concerns about it.
You're talking about being able to go 4 wide receivers, which is something that we haven't seen Auburn do in a long time. And then I think, well, if Cobb's the one back out there, then you've got 5 receiving options. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of unknown there. Does the pinky right here at the start of camp on Cobb, does that worry you a little bit?
They're being cautious. The only thing you're concerned about from a ball carrier standpoint is possession of the football and taking care of it with a fractured pinky like that. What they normally do, as you know, is they'll tape it to the other finger. Yeah. And that helps with ball security. Cobb isn't known as a fumbler. So I think you're okay. If it was a leg or a knee, you just have to be careful with ball security. And it does question the element of he's such an effective receiver out of the backfield. How does a fractured finger play into that? I think I might be overblowing it. I think by the time Baylor, you're talking about 3 more weeks, but he's such a weapon, and he's Singleton and him will be the 2 guys I think to keep an eye on the jet sweeps. And you line him up offset and, boom, put him in motion and boom, he goes. And Eric Singleton, Singleton's got such elite speed. There's so many options. You don't want to take away the opportunity of doing a quick pitch to him and worry about him being able to secure the ball because of a broken finger. Alston's heel, I think, will be fine. I think it was precautionary. And then Darrell Robinson looks to be rounding into shape and to form. But again, can he do it against Baylor's defense really struggled last year. So he may really be beneficial that they open. I know Baylor's got some love and they're a good football team. This is not going to be an easy opener. Auburn's not favored. But I think from a defensive standpoint, Aranda's defense struggled last year. And I know they did some portal things and all that, but I think Auburn's going to be able to score some points. And that might be a good defense to start off if you're Darrell Robinson, your college career, and not having to face the gauntlet of an SEC defense.
Agreed. It's very interesting because this is not a conversation that we're too much used to when it comes to running backs, because you knew Tank Bigsby was the guy and you knew that Jarquez Hunter was going to be, coming in right after him. And then like the new college football video game, they have Darrell, Damari and Jeremiah all rated an 83 overall. Like everyone just kind of saying they got potential, but we don't know. So it will be fascinating to see how it all shakes out. But you're the most confident in the wide receiver room. I think if we all had to put money on it right now, and it would be Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton would be our picks for who the two most productive are going to be. But you mentioned it a second ago, there's a lot of options in that room. So who is going to be the third guy, the third most productive wide receiver in that room? Because there's still going to be some opportunities.
Wow. I want to answer this with a caveat with not diving too deep into the Malcolm Simmons thing. But let's just say all things being equal, let's assume that Malcolm Simmons, he's practicing with the team, everything goes as planned, then it would be him because he is very, very talented, very, very fast. He would be a number one receiver on a lot of teams. But if I wanted to go 3A and 3B, or like Auburn does when they wuss out on their depth chart and put the or next to them, I would say Perry Thompson is emerging and coming on. I think when he was in high school, Dustin, he was so much bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody else. They would just run him on fly routes, and he would either run past people or out jump people. There wasn't any intricacy to his route running. He had to learn all that when he got here, and it takes some time to learn certain routes and the complexity of route running, and not just saying, okay, I'm going to run by this guy. You're not going to run by a lot of SEC corners. You're not going to out jump and out athlete a lot of guys. He's had to learn how to use his body, position his body along the sideline, all that stuff that are they're absolute tools of the trade. And I know that KLS worked with him a lot last year, a lot. Yeah. And I think when you watch Keandre Lambert-Smith in the NFL, you can see why other receivers were like drawn to him. Singleton could be that guy to pick up the mantle on him and say, hey, this is how I come out of my break. I mean, if you watch that footage, there's some footage. It's like 6 cuts of video of Singleton out of his break, the first 5 yards. I mean, that's how you run routes. I mean, it's such a science to it. And you remember the years that Auburn had such a elementary route tree, and you knew exactly what routes they were running.
I knew by the formation about 5 or 6 years in the Gus. I knew by the formation who was doing what.
And then the routes weren't run as precise as they needed to be. And if they weren't, the quarterback would eat the ball. I mean, I sometimes think about what an Anthony Schwartz or a Seth Williams would do in this route tree, right?
Yeah, Seth would have Hugh would have Seth cooking.
So that's the one thing to look at. I think that Thompson's learning the trade of being a receiver and running routes.
A couple notes on what you just said there. One, I know you'll name you remember well, and you see my Buck shirt on. Didn't end fondly, but Eric Singleton's routes, I saw that clip the other day, and I said, boy, them routes look like Antonio Brown almost.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're crisp and clean like that.
Watch him out when Antonio Brown, before Burfict, who belongs in jail, went to his head across the middle. When Antonio Brown ran his routes, all people ever wanted to talk about was the last 10 yards watching him catch the ball downfield. Watch the first 5 yards of how he ran his routes and got out of his break. He was such a hard worker, and he would get separation. The route was won then. And you're right. That's a great comparison. And I think that there's a science to that. A lot of people want to stay upright and get long and stay lazy out of the break and then explode 10 yards down. Well, I mean, think about it, especially if you're running a slant, which, oh, by the way, they're running at practice. I mean, a slant? Holy cow.
We can do that. We call
an offensive line and a slant? Is it Armageddon? I mean, but if you're running a slant, by God, you better be twitchy and come out of that after 5 yards, especially if you're at the 10-yard line. You ain't got time. It's one step, boom, get rid of it. And so I don't know. I mean, I just think there's so many possibilities there and so many options and so many things that Auburn fans from an eyeball test will go, we haven't seen that in a while at Auburn. And so that's something to look forward to as far as the passing game is concerned.
And I'm really glad that you said what you said about Perry. I went up and watched Perry 2 or 3 times his senior year. It was about an hour up the road from me up there in Foley. And I told everybody this because I'd also went and watched Cam Coleman. And I said, hey, Cam Coleman's he's more ready, okay? Because what he's being asked to do at Central Phoenix City and the way he's being coached is a lot different than what Perry Thompson is being asked to do. I mean, if it was 3rd and 2, then Foley lined Perry up at halfback and handed him the ball. And you're absolutely right about his routes. It was either step off the line of scrimmage and catch the screen pass and see what you can do with it, or go downfield and we'll throw it up to you. So I talked a lot on the show at the time, like, hey, guys, I'm going to watch him play. The tools are all there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was going to take Perry a year or two. And to hear that he is finally coming into his own and fulfilling his potential, it's really exciting, man. And I think, and we'll wrap it up here, Darrell, my takeaway from all of the stuff, all of the positive information that we've heard all summer, and now that we're hearing coming into fall camp about the weapons on offense, is there shouldn't be any more troubles in the red zone. There shouldn't be any more troubles in the red zone because Jackson Arnold has the ability with his legs to make things happen if everything breaks down, and it should be something that the defense should at least have to account for. You've got capable running backs. We'll see how that all plays out. But, man, I think back to you throwing the ball to Robert Lewis in the Missouri game, and he's not able to come down with it in the end zone. That kind of stuff should not happen this year. You also having your field goal kicker back helps out tremendously in terms of play calling and knowing I got 3 in my back pocket and all that. But there can't be any more red zone woes. There's no excuse with all these weapons and particularly their skill sets for there to be any more trouble scoring once we get inside that 20-yard line this year.
And that's where, Dustin, inside the 5, there's got to be a running back that emerges that could be that power back. I mean, I know you can scheme to get guys out wide and you can go through gaps and that kind of thing, but there still needs to be that back that can put their head down and their shoulder down and get in from the 2 or the 3. Because if there's not, you're going to have a problem because you can't just keep throwing fade routes, or you can't throw swing passes or bubble screens from the 3. So Jackson Arnold, though, does give you that option at the 3 of pulling it and walking in. And, I know people hate packages. They do. And I hate seeing a guy go all the way down the field and then get pulled.
Yeah.
I hate that. I know they did it with Robbie and it worked really, really well because he was just a different type of quarterback. Inside the 3, he was going to score. Ashton Daniels can do that if you struggle inside the 3 and give you that running option, because people don't realize how big physically he is, and he can be a weapon. I don't want to see him used if, like I said, if Auburn's got all this momentum and they get inside the 3 and then you pull somebody, that's different. Only if something stalls would I like to see maybe it switched up. But Jackson Arnold has got good legs, and he's good with his legs. So there's an option there where you don't even have to take him out. He can pull it. He can run the quarterback draw, quarterback keep, whatever, and score.
Darrell, before he gets you out of here, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, so you don't have to go super in depth, but I got to get your opinion on it, man. Aaron Rodgers with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This thing going to work out?
I think he's got one good year left in him. I think for whatever reason, Tomlin is the kind of coach that he likes to play for. I think he's got weapons around him. Working out is a kind of a generic term. I think that Aaron Rodgers and the Steeler passing game will be more efficient than it was last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And I do believe in their running game a little bit as well. So working out, I think he'll be solid this year and probably have a little bit of a bounce back year because of what he has and who's calling plays and that kind of thing. But it's a one-off. It's a one and done. And it has the potential to go sour really quickly because but Tomlin, for whatever reason, he doesn't get players to really, he doesn't have players that badmouth him or talk about him. I mean, they do stupid things off of the field, and I think sometimes he's too soft with them. Sometimes I think he's too much of a player's coach and doesn't drop the hammer when he needs to drop the hammer. But Rodgers and him just click, and we'll see if Metcalf and they got really good tight ends and Johnny. So we'll see. I think he'll have a good year. He will not be the Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago, but I think he'll be an upgrade over what Pittsburgh had last year.
I hear you. That's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch. And I can't ever blame anybody that goes to the Jets and fail. I don't know what to make of that. I just don't hold it against you.
Everybody does. Everybody. I mean, it's been such a long time. I mean, I think didn't even Brett Favre struggle in the 1 year that he was at the Jets before he went back to the Vikings?
He was hot, right? He had like 5 or 6 good games, and they were like 4-1, 5-1, something like that. And then they just tanked. And then he was awful down the stretch. And then he goes to Minnesota and wins like NFC MVP at 42 years old.
It's where quarterbacks go to die. I mean, it's just it's a graveyard. There ain't no doubt about it.
It's tough. Well, man, I've had fun doing this. Let's definitely have you on again soon, buddy. Tell everybody where they can find you and everything you got going on.
Wherever you get your podcast, Locked on Auburn, Wednesdays and Fridays. You can catch it Spotify, Apple, and then on YouTube. And then Sunday night at 8 o'clock, Kyle Rush, Charlie 5, a.k.a. Charlie 5, Zach, and I do a show, we do a live show where we interact with, there's chats going and we answer questions. And we kind of recap the previous week in Auburn athletics. We have a good time doing that.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's great content. So if you guys are not following that, what are you doing? Get over there and check those guys out and hit the like button on this video. Sub to the channel. Look, we are at 2,140 subs. So before the ball gets kicked off, I at least got to get 60 more and get to that next benchmark. And before the end of the season, we definitely want to make that push for 3K, man. The numbers are up. The memberships are up. Go ahead and sign up for those today. And follow me on X at DMcShaw28. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. It's War Damn Eagle, baby. Out.